In Jesus' teachings, there were many things that he said about possessions and the use of them. One of them was a parable that is rather familiar, coming to us from the 16th chapter of Luke. Let us listen to Jesus' parable with fresh discernment. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen, and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." But Abraham said, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us is a great chasm that has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." And he said, "Then, Father, I beg you to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them." And he said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent." And he said to them, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." May God bless to us this parable, for this parable is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. In Paul's letter to Timothy, which we heard Clinton share with us, he writes of a foundation in faith that allows us to, and I quote, "take hold of the life that really is life." To be honest with you, actually, that's from the New Revised Standard Version. I actually like the Revised Standard Translation. It has a little more bounce to it, I think. It'd be a great bumper sticker. "Life which is life indeed." Doesn't that have kind of a ring to it? Life which is life indeed. And I think that life which is life indeed is truly what Jesus was trying to express in his parable. Now, to be honest with you, I normally preach my own sermons. But this morning, I am going to ask a Pharisee from Jesus' own time who heard Jesus tell this very parable to share with us his own experiences and reflections. Peace be with you, or as we say in my homeland, shalom. And the response is shalom, shalom. It is my privilege to speak with you this day. I have heard that you are intrigued with the sayings of the rabbi, the teacher from Nazareth, Jesus. And well, you should be, because he is a most intriguing man. But to hear of the sayings of Jesus first, from me, you must first endure the many words about myself. I am Josiah ben Shema, a Pharisee in Jerusalem. And one who has actually heard the rabbi speak. If you can bear my immodesty, I first will tell you of myself. I am known among both the Pharisees and the common people as a fair and honest man. From my earliest years, I have held the law of Moses close to my heart and to my conduct. Justice, a spirit of forgiveness, and charity for the poor have spoken out to me from the Torah, the law of Moses, and also from the prophets. So it was that I was drawn to hear this Jesus from Nazareth. For it is spoken of in every place that Jesus has taught about these things, and it is murmured in the whispers of my servants that they brought to me from the marketplace, that Jesus' teachings went often beyond and sometimes seemed above the Torah. This I had to hear for myself. And so I found Jesus, and he was teaching openly. He spoke to everyone directly to their faces. He spoke in personal tones which bespoke sincerity. Even more startling, although he was surrounded by the poor merchant and the beggar and various women, and also members of the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, the scribes, he spoke to each one of them with equal deference. Not like other rabbis seem to do, he would not posture in respect to the one and turn in condescension to another. This alone captured my attention. And then I heard Jesus speak. To be honest, it was an old Egyptian tale, an old Egyptian story, one that was widely known and it was often repeated. It was a story of a rich man, for his proper name, Dives, means rich man, and also a destitute beggar named Lazarus. I remember my immediate sense of disappointment about Jesus, for even though he dressed it up with Hebrew references to Father Abraham, to repeat this old Egyptian tale, which everyone knows of the virtuous and respected man, validated by his gain in life and rewarded with luxury in the afterlife, and also of a beggar punished for either his sins or the sins of his forefathers in this life and tormented with similar fate after death. Even the children in the streets knew this old story and also its conclusion. But wait, Jesus changed the old Egyptian story. The rich man gains condemnation? The sore-ridden beggar in Father Abraham's bosom? And the relatives of Dives, well, they have the same consequence without being warned? And the common folk were now cheering Jesus telling this story. The Pharisees who had come became, many of them, red with anger, for they felt that they were being singled out and insulted intentionally. So they stormed away. I was almost drawn to go along with them. And Jesus began to leave the place. I was confused and I was angry, and yet there was this long-standing emptiness in me that came right to the surface. And I called out to him, "Rabbi, Rabbi!" And he stopped and he turned toward me with a bit of mild surprise in his eyes, probably that I, a Pharisee, remained and wanted to speak. "Rabbi, answer me this. In your version of this familiar tale, what has such a pitiful one as Lazarus done to merit the reward?" And he spoke to me intently, and he said, "Nothing. Lazarus has done nothing. For he is sick, and he is crippled, and he must beg to survive. There is nothing that he can do to merit. And yet he is loved by God in the midst of his nothingness. He is loved by God. I really didn't understand his answer, and so I pressed on. Then what of the rich man? What did he do to deserve such an end? And again, he answered me with only a few words. He also did nothing. He did nothing wrong. Truly, he did not break the law of Moses. He did not violate the ritual of our people. He did not offend the customs of the times. Then, Rabbi, what is the point of this tale? Your Dives is so very much like me. Tell me, Rabbi, what did he do to deserve divine wrath? And Jesus said softly, he did nothing. And he turned and walked away. But he said that with such an intensity, it chilled my deepest being as he walked away. I walked to my house very, very deep in my own thoughts, and I was now finding all manner of difference between myself and this Dives. I mean, he dined sumptuously, and I prefer moderation. He was very rich, but even among the Pharisees, my wealth is modest and my income is honest. Perhaps Dives did not give alms to the poor, whereas I regularly give to the beggars and the blind in the temple area virtually every day. But none of my internal debate seemed to help me. Jesus left his story bare of detail for a purpose. But what? What was his purpose? Suddenly, I nearly tripped over an old blind man who was sitting by the side of the gateway I was passing. And I recognized him as one who begs outside of the temple gate every day. And I stopped and I looked at him, wondering if he was like Lazarus. And he said, "Who is there?" suspiciously. I said, "I am Josiah ben Shema." I waited for him to beg from me, but he didn't say anything, and he didn't beg. "Answer me this, man. Why do you not beg for alms in this place?" And he acted like he was very afraid. And I asked him again, and I told him, "Answer me truthfully, but without fear." And he said to me cautiously, "Alms only come when there are others to notice." I gave this man a sum that I normally would have given for a whole week's charity, for his few words enlightened to me this tale told by Jesus. Each one of us has a Lazarus nearby. Still, we find ways to look toward more pleasant vistas. And if we cannot avoid, we excuse. Or we convince ourselves that Lazarus' suffering is somehow merited and somehow natural for him. And when we do respond to him, it is where we can be seen most easily, so that our alms purchase for us respectability. The old blind beggar was right. Even I waited until daily prayers at the temple to give to the needy. Jesus told me he did nothing. Dives' failing was not that he was rich, any more than Lazarus' poverty gave him virtue. But Dives, unlike Lazarus, could make a choice. He could make a choice about his life. He had the resources, he had the opportunity, he had the teaching of Moses and the prophets. He had numerous testimonials to his righteousness. And he chose to do nothing. I've not seen the rabbi since then. They say he has been arrested by soldiers and taken before Pontius Pilate. I worry about him. The sharpness and the brevity of his words may indeed cost him his life. I would like to see him once more just to tell him some things about myself. I find that I have begun to look upon the blind and the beggar more deeply, to try to see in them something that is worthy of my care, and I always now seem to find it. I find myself wanting to give more and more to relieve their suffering, and I do, but I do it through my servants, giving to those who will never learn of the source. And I sense myself becoming all the richer for whatever wealth I give up. I think the rabbi would be pleased. It surprises me that I don't give now because I'm fearful for what life after my death might bring, but rather I give out of joy of what life even now has come to mean for me. I must go. I would leave you my peace, my shalom, but I would rather give to you the shalom of the Rabbi, Jesus of Nazareth. For it is his shalom, his peace, that somehow has captured my imagination and has truly captured my life. We want to thank Josiah ben Shema for sharing with us this morning. For even though he is a fictional character, he is very real because he's so much like us. People who know well and who mean well and know that God calls us to a higher life that is life indeed. And so if we hear him clearer, we realize that among our world's people, and even among the world's Christians, we are a very fortunate people who have choices as to how we will fulfill the Great Commission to spread the gospel, to truly spread the gospel actively of Christ near and far. Choices on how we will expend the resources God has entrusted to us as stewards, to heal, to clothe, to feed, to educate, to free, to comfort. Choices as to where our mission work will do the most good for God. If we have truly heard Josiah ben Shema, and through him we have encountered Jesus, then we realize the choice we should be making is not if. It's not if, but it's how, it's where, it's when. And now as we move forward into our church year, and many opportunities to be creative and joyfully engaged in showing God's love, many occasions also in which we can do nothing. Let us choose, as the Apostle Paul says to us, life which is life indeed, which is the ministry of Jesus.